came into this hobby late 2000 teenish area, but I really didn't fall deep down the rabbit hole until post 2020 peak crowdfunding FOMO. Anything that was shiny had a wonderful marketing campaign was a theme that even mildly interested me. I backed. Fast forward to now, I've learned my lessons. I back very few things relative to what I used to back, and am realizing one of the major follies, other than emptying my wallet unnecessarily, is I skipped over games that had come before that are so much better than what is actually coming out for the most part now. Sure, they weren't the perfect theme or don't have the nice shiny coat of paint to them. Maybe they're not a wonderful deluxe version, but the actual mechanics are just beautiful. In fact, that's exactly why I am starting this, what I hope is a series where I share with you these little teeny tiny moments in games that expose to me the beauty in their design. You see, I've come to find that, especially watching YouTube, people like me, the broad overviews, yes, no, I like it, isn't particularly helpful. Sure, it gives me a general idea if it's the right direction for me to go into, and do I want to explore that game, maybe give it a chance, but I don't really know if I love a game until I get into the details. Those little moments that just make your brain fire all of a sudden. Those moments that are hard to explain when you're in the midst of it for the very first time because you don't understand how all of the pieces go together. And in this series, I'm going to give you just a few of those. It'll be a really quick overview, but this isn't a big review. I mean, these are all games that up front are wonderful. They're the moments in games where you just know you're going to fall in love with this game, or they're the moments in which you fall in love with them. Sure, some games are love at first sight, but there's some games that you just have to, I don't know, understand a little bit more to really appreciate the beauty. And Barrage is absolutely one of those games. The theme of dystopic 1920s, 30s, trying to create energy because all other energy sources have failed via harnessing the power of water, frankly makes me want to. Now that I've had time with it, plenty of plays, I see the beauty in it. In fact, there's 4 different things about this game that just make it sing for me. And we're gonna go over those, but real quick, let me give you just a super high level overview so you have just enough context to understand what the heck I'm talking about when we get into the minutia of this game. Sorry for the interruption. I just have to thank a few people. James Vincent, John Kohler, John Fleming, Compy, AKA Frodo. Thank you so much for supporting Neon Gorilla. You are the newest members of the Cardboard Club. If you're at all interested, by any chance, go to the channel page and click the join button. You'll be prompted with the video. You can see all of the different things that come with it, or there should be a link in the description. Back to your regularly scheduled program. So like I said before, dystopic 1920s, 30s, you're trying to harness the power of water to create energy, to fulfill contracts, and score goals, both intra-round and final goals, and the person with the most points at the end of the game wins. The crux of the game is you're building dams to stop the water when it flows. You're building conduits to pump the water to the right place, which is the powerhouses, which you're also building to actually create the energy. The game is played over 5 rounds, and each round you have 12 workers to place. But that's basically it. There's not much more to it, except a whole lot of detail. That brings me to the first beautiful part about this game, and it's simply the water. The board is essentially divided up into 3 different levels, all the way from mountains down to plains, and we all know what water does. It flows downhill, and there's no difference here. However, water becomes extremely interesting when you start to harness it as a player. And if you look at the map before anything's built on it, you can basically follow the water droplets from basin to basin through these different streams out the back of the map, and they don't do anything. There's nothing stopping them. However, you are going to intervene and build a dam. The dam, like I had mentioned before, has one major function. It's to stop those water droplets as they flow. If you have a conduit there, you can also use another player's conduit, and you have a powerhouse connected to it, guess what? You get to produce energy. As one of your actions, place some of your workers, and you produce the energy, fulfill contracts, all the other stuff I talked about. However, the really interesting thing is when somebody builds a dam a little bit further upstream. this is now directly affecting the flow of water to your dam. And the really interesting thing is once they harness the water coming from that same dam in that same stream, they may divert it to a totally different stream all of a sudden. So you as a player need to think about mitigating the risk of another player building in front of you and diverting that water somewhere else. The great thing is that water continues to flow after they've produced energy. So if you've thought ahead and you build another dam right next to you, guess what? You have it covered. Now you might think, why don't I just build all the dams up in the mountains and get the water when it first comes out? Well, some of the pieces are more expensive the higher you build on this particular map. That is balanced by the cheaper cost a little bit lower down on the map. This aspect really rewards long-term planning. Coming out of the gates, you're able to look at these water tiles at the head of each of these streams and see exactly what round and how many water droplets will actually be dropped. It's anywhere from 0 to 3, and you can plan for it. So in the very first round, you know, going into that 5th round, what water droplets will be dropped and where. On top of that, you can also drop water droplets as well wherever you want by using some of the other action spaces. So you can start to manipulate this. This is where the network building aspect of this game comes in, because you're very much looking at where you're stopping the water, where it's going to be diverted after they produce energy or you produce energy higher up, and can you go and make use of that water as it continues to roll downhill. This creates so much tension. This is one of the things that detractors point to as something they don't like, because this is very much take that. However, blocking somebody isn't the end all be all. You can counter, like I said, and harness that water later on down, or you can maybe pay a little extra and put a base right in front of them. There's typically always a move to be had, and experienced players will be able to think 4 or 5 rounds ahead and start to prepare for the worst in the very beginning. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring Barrage into this series, is you don't really understand everything that's going on in the first couple of plays. In fact, it took me probably 5 plays to really be able to think ahead on this game, and that is the beauty here. I'm afraid that some people might bounce off this really quickly just because they don't understand how to thwart somebody building in front of them. Regardless, it is one of my absolute favorite parts about this puzzle, but is nowhere near the only thing in this puzzle that is exciting. So I just mentioned kind of haphazardly, yeah, just build stuff out there. How do you actually do that? You do that with these construction pieces. It's a combination of cement mixers and excavators. Each component that you build might take the use of an excavator or a cement mixer. And the tricky part, or the hook here, is once you use them, there's a cool off mechanism, meaning when you use an excavator or a cement mixer, it doesn't go away forever in real life. It's just in use. And the way the game simulates this is absolutely brilliant. You put it on this wheel, and that wheel continues to spin as you build more and more. However, it takes quite a while for that to actually come back around to you. So there's all these different little mitigation tricks throughout the game that allow you to get your stuff back sooner so you can build more and thwart that other player blocking your water. Look around in the game and find this wrench symbol. Anytime you find that, you get to spin your wheel. The easiest way to do this are to actually go to those spaces, but there's scarcity there. There's only a few of them, and then if you want to spin it multiple times, which in a lot of cases you need to go and spin it 3 times to be able to get your stuff back and build the next thing, it's really expensive. Some other ways to start to do that and move it along is try to find things to build that are cheap, meaning you don't have to use so many excavators or cement mixers. That only goes so far, because you, like I said, you have to get that thing spun back another 3 spots in order to get your stuff back to build the next thing. I had mentioned that you're fulfilling contracts with this energy. Some of these contracts have these wrench symbols and allow you to spin them more. Another more reliable way is take a look at your player board. You're going to see that wrench along with an exclamation mark. That means you get to spin it during your income phase at the end of each and every round. So there is a plethora of ways to be able to spin that wheel. None of them are particularly easy or cheap, but there are things in which you want to think ahead on. And it's yet another crunchy piece of this puzzle that really makes it hum. I had overlooked the importance of this wheel early on in playing this game. Frankly, I was overwhelmed with so many other things that understanding how to get that wheel to turn early and often is such a critical part of your enjoyment in the game. Otherwise, you feel so constrained. You can't build anything else. You're letting water flow all over the place. You're not producing the energy or fulfilling the contracts. Being able to manipulate that wheel directly connected to my enjoyment in this game. So for the third aspect of something that is just brilliant in this game, and I don't think it's novel per se, but it works together with everything else to create just an enormous amount of friction each and every turn, is the worker placement mechanism. So when you're placing a worker, you're not just placing it on a single spot and blocking it. You are spending anywhere from 1 to 3 workers, plus maybe even some money, to be able to go to each of these spots. Typically, if you're early, you spend less, and if you're late, you spend more. This creates a sense of scarcity in your actions, and it will really stop you in your tracks when you're trying to optimize your turns, because you are fighting with somebody else to get to those spaces. And if you're having to spend more of your workers or money, you might not be able to do what you need to do to get everything done. You might start your turn looking at this big juicy pile of water sitting behind one of your dams. You're ready to go out and produce that energy. You see the spot that gives you an extra 2 energy. It only costs 2 people. That's perfect. However, there is a wonderful contract that's sitting there ready for you to take and fulfill, and it's going to spiral into so much more, whether it's giving you more turns on that wheel, or maybe even more excavators or cement mixers that will then parlay into a bigger and bigger turn. You have to make the decision to not go to that production spot first. You might lose the ability to produce the extra 2 energy that contract may actually need. With that said, you might be able to go to the more expensive spot, spending 3 workers and some extra coins, but that may stop you from being able to do something else in this particular round that you need to be able to score the round goal. It goes on and on and on. The amount of AP that you can achieve in this game, I will admit, is pretty high, but it's so juicy. It's so fun. And this feeling of scarcity in these worker placement spots create tension even when it's not your turn. You are watching the other players take their turns with bated breath. You are hoping they don't take what you want. And oh, it feels so awful when they do, but it feels so wonderful when they just whiff it and they take something else. They don't see the opportunity to block you, or maybe they're trying to do the same exact thing, but you're going to be able to get out in front of them. They have to wait to take the same contract, and you're going to get that cheap energy spot, and that's going to just rocket you out into the lead. And the number 4 thing that just keeps me coming back to this game, and I wouldn't say it's not really a moment in the game per se. It's as I continue to revisit the game, I'm excited about the asymmetric powers that you get both in your executive officers and your companies. Each company has a power that's associated with the third powerhouse you build. Once you build it, you have this wonderful power in order to use the rest of the game. But on top of that, immediately you have an executive officer that you will also choose, and it will combine to create an immediate power with that more delayed power your company board will eventually give you. Some of these combinations are incredibly juicy. Take Italy and Victor Feisler, for example. If you have both of these, this will allow you to invest in really cheap conduit and flow very little water for a big return, because no matter what, how little the energy production you have, it will equal 4. And I will say there's a lot of times, especially early game, because you can't afford to build the big conduits, that you're going to be producing under that 4 mark. So this is such a huge boon to be able to produce 4 energy no matter what. See, every water droplet is multiplied by the conduit power to give you your power. So there are many instances where you have 1 water droplet on a 1 power conduit and you are making 1 power. This is an absolute game changer and something you can build around. You don't have to worry about trying to strain, especially early on, to find a way to pay for those really expensive conduits, because the higher power conduit, the higher cost. And then to top it all off, if you combine that with Italy, once you build that third powerhouse, you're getting 3 extra power at the end of every single production action. So that's a minimum of 7 power, even if you are producing 1 power. That is such a huge boon. Or maybe you don't get that 3 extra power and you pair Victor with Germany. Germany allows you to take a production action 2 times in a row. So you can have a few of these really cheap conduits producing 1 water at a time, and you get to produce 2 different production actions at the same exact time. You still get that same exact effect. No matter what, it will be 4 power, and that is huge. There's 4 different companies in base game with 7 different executive officers. They all do totally different stuff. They combine to give you new and unique powers and abilities. They don't change any rules other than just giving you something extra to do. They're really easy to integrate into the game. This isn't like an asymmetric route thing. This is a really easy introduction and gives you a really specific path to optimize around. And it does make a big difference if you can figure out how to optimize for the combination of powers that you have. We just went over a lot there. This game is incredibly in depth. I mean, the concept of just trapping water, producing energy, and fulfilling contracts is pretty simple, pretty easy to wrap your mind around. But when you get into the deep meta game of this thing, it is so intriguing. If this at all interests you, I would highly recommend going and playing it on BGA right now for free. I played the vast majority of my early games there, and it helped me a lot. It really helped me to learn the game and then eventually get the copy and get it to the table with my wife, who, by the way, beats me all the time in it, which is actually really frustrating. But I digress. So hopefully this sparked a little interest in some people out there that maybe didn't give Barrage much of a chance. They bounced off of it really quickly, or maybe you've never even given it a second look. It just looked boring to you. I implore you, give it a chance because there is some absolute beauty in this design. And with all of that said, thank you so much for being here. If you made it to the end, I really, really appreciate it. Let me know, have you tried Barrage? Do you like it, love it, hate it, whatever it is? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If this has inspired you to go try it on BGA, let me know after you've played it. I'd love to hear from you. And with that said, have a great day.